Caleb, the alpha of the Silvermoon Pack, lived his life in the shadows, keeping his true identity hidden from humans. His pack was loyal, and life was peaceful in the quiet town of Crescent Hollow. That was until he met her. Amelia, a kind and soft-hearted woman, who had just moved to the town for a fresh start, unknowingly captured his heart. From the moment their paths crossed, Caleb couldn't help but feel a deep connection to her. He tried to stay away, fearful of the danger his werewolf side could bring her. But every time she smiled, every time she spoke, it felt like fate itself was pulling him closer. Despite his fears, Caleb found himself following her around town, watching her from a distance. She didn't know who he truly was, and Caleb was determined to keep it that way. She was human, and revealing his secret could mean putting her life in danger. Still, every time they interacted, the bond grew stronger. He found himself walking a fine line between his duty to his pack and his growing feelings for Amelia. But deep down, Caleb knew there was no turning back. A part of him hoped she could never learn the truth. Caleb sat in the woods one night, looking up at the moon. His thoughts kept drifting back to Amelia. His heart ached with the knowledge that he could never have her. She was everything he wanted, but their worlds were too different. The pack would never accept her, and the humans would never understand him. Still, Caleb couldn't shake the desire to be close to her. The pack trusted him, and yet something didn't feel right. As alpha, Caleb had a duty to keep his pack safe, but the whispers of discontent within the pack were growing louder. Some members questioned his leadership. Some were restless. It wasn't until one of his most trusted pack members, Jasper, mentioned strange activities around the outskirts of the town that Caleb's senses went on high alert. He couldn't help but wonder if there was someone in his pack causing trouble, someone who was planning something. But who? And why? The peace in Crescent Hollow shattered one evening when Caleb received an urgent message from his beta, Leo. Amelia had been kidnapped. Panic surged through Caleb's body as he quickly ran to the location where she had been taken. His thoughts raced as he tried to make sense of what had happened. He could feel it in his bones. This was no ordinary kidnapping. When Caleb reached the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, he could hear her voice faintly from inside. His instincts kicked in, and he immediately shifted into his werewolf form. With his heightened senses, Caleb could smell her fear, and it drove him into a frenzy. He tore through the door with ease, ready to take down whoever was responsible for this. But when he entered the room, there was no one there. Just a note, one that read, "This is just the beginning." His heart sank. He wasn't just dealing with a random criminal. Someone in his pack was involved. And they had Amelia. Frustration boiled inside Caleb as he returned to his pack's territory. The pack's loyalty had always been a cornerstone of their strength, but now, with Amelia's life in jeopardy, that bond was crumbling. Caleb couldn't keep his secret any longer. His pack needed to know who they were really fighting for. He gathered his trusted members, and for the first time, he revealed his true nature. The room fell silent as Caleb let his wolf's power ripple through the air. His transformation wasn't the graceful shift that most wolves underwent. It was raw, untamed, and terrifying. He looked at his pack, his heart pounding in his chest. "Amelia is in danger, and I need your help," he said. The room buzzed with mixed emotions. Some were shocked, others fearful. But Caleb didn't care. He needed them now more than ever. As he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone in the room wasn't as loyal as they seemed. The way they looked at him, there was something behind their eyes. Suspicion grew in Caleb's heart. With his pack now fully aware of his secret, Caleb felt the weight of their gaze. He no longer had the luxury of keeping his two worlds separate. But he couldn't afford to dwell on that. Amelia was out there, and time was running out. He sent his best warriors to scour the town for any trace of her, while he personally questioned every pack member, one by one. Leo, Caleb's beta, stood by his side. He had always been loyal, but even Leo couldn't help but notice the strange tension among the pack. There was something unsettling in the air, a presence that Caleb couldn't quite place. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Caleb's senses flared. He could feel eyes on him. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Someone was watching him, and it wasn't just the enemy. Just then, Caleb received a call. It was Amelia's voice on the other end. She was alive, but barely. She spoke in a trembling whisper, "Caleb, you don't know who you're trusting." The line went dead. Caleb's heart skipped a beat. Who was betraying him? Caleb gathered the pack again, this time with a sense of urgency in his voice. "Someone in this pack is betraying us." Amelia's message was clear. "They know more than we think." The tension in the room was palpable. Pack members exchanged wary glances. Caleb's alpha presence had always kept them in line, but now, even the strongest of them were questioning his leadership. Who could it be? Leo asked, his voice low. Caleb paced back and forth, his mind racing. "I don't know, but I will find out. Amelia's life is on the line. I will not let anyone destroy what we've built." As Caleb continued his investigation, suspicion started to fall on one of his most trusted members, Jasper. He had been too eager to offer help, too quick to dismiss the possibility of a traitor in the pack. But Caleb wasn't sure yet. There was too much at stake, and he couldn't afford to make a mistake. Caleb confronted Jasper, his wolf instincts howling inside him. "You're the one," Caleb said, his voice cold. But Jasper's response shocked him. "It's not me, Caleb. I swear it, but I know who it is. And if you don't act quickly, it will be too late." Jasper's words hung in the air, and Caleb's got twisted with confusion. The truth was becoming more elusive. Caleb wasn't sure who to trust anymore. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was someone else working behind the scenes, pulling the strings. But he had no time to waste. Amelia needed him. Determined to find the true traitor, Caleb gathered his most trusted pack members for a final, desperate search. They would tear through every corner of their territory if they had to. Amelia's life depended on it. The pack's loyalty was fractured. Caleb could see it in their eyes. Even Leo, his most trusted ally, seemed distant. Doubts lingered, and trust was a fragile thing. Caleb had always prided himself on his strength and leadership, but now, he felt as if everything he had worked for was crumbling. As Caleb ventured deeper into the forest one night, his senses sharpened. He could hear the faintest rustle in the distance. His heart pounded as he tracked the sound. Suddenly, he saw them, two figures, standing together. One of them was Jasper, the other. Caleb couldn't see clearly, but something about the other figure made his blood run cold. "Jasper," Caleb growled, his voice low and threatening. But as the moonlight illuminated the other figure's face, Caleb was struck with shock. It was Leo, his own beta. "You're the one," Caleb whispered, barely able to comprehend what he was seeing. Leo, his right-hand wolf, had betrayed him. "I didn't want it to be this way, Caleb," Leo said, his voice dark and filled with regret. "But you left me no choice. You were too focused on her. I wanted the power, and I had to do what I had to do." The words hit Caleb like a punch to the gut. Leo had been by his side for years, and now Caleb realized that the man he had trusted most had been plotting against him all along. Betrayal ran deeper than Caleb had imagined. "I trusted you," Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion. But Leo simply looked away, his eyes filled with regret. The battle was inevitable. Caleb was alpha, and he wasn't about to let Leo get away with this. Under the full moon, Caleb and Leo faced each other in the clearing. Their wolves were ready, claws bared, eyes glowing with rage. The pack watched from the distance, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. The tension was unbearable. "End it, Caleb," Leo said, his voice almost pleading. "You know what you have to do." Caleb's heart weighed heavy, but he knew this fight had to happen. The pack's future was at stake. With a fierce roar, Caleb lunged at Leo. Their wolves collided with a force that shook the earth beneath them. As the fight raged on, Caleb knew that this was more than just a battle for power. This was a fight for loyalty, for justice, and for the future of his pack. And in the end, only one would emerge victorious. The moon hung high in the sky as Caleb and Leo fought, claws tearing into flesh, fangs locking in a desperate battle for dominance. Caleb's heart pounded with each strike. This wasn't just about loyalty anymore, this was a battle for control of his pack, for Amelia, and for everything he had fought to protect. Leo had betrayed him, but Caleb could still feel the weight of their history together. The Alpha knew this wasn't just a fight for leadership, it was a personal one. Leo's wolf was fast, but Caleb's rage gave him strength. With a swift, savage swipe of his claws, Caleb knocked Leo to the ground. His breath was heavy, his body aching from the brutal fight, but the Alpha knew he couldn't hesitate. "You've made your choice, Leo," Caleb growled, standing over him, eyes glowing fiercely. Leo's wolf lay defeated, but his human side still seemed unwilling to accept defeat. "It didn't have to be this way," Leo whispered, his voice filled with regret. With one last look, Caleb stepped back, his heart hardening. "It was your choice, not mine." He left Leo behind, knowing that the pack would never be the same again. Caleb knew the victory over Leo was only temporary. As Alpha, his job was to protect his pack, but now there were bigger threats lurking, both within and outside their territory. The betrayal ran deep, and as the dust settled after the fight, Caleb was left with a gnawing suspicion that the pack was still at risk. In the dead of night, Caleb met with his trusted pack members in the woods. The air was tense, and even the trees seemed to hold their breath. "There's more at play here," Caleb said, his voice cold. "I don't know who else is behind this, but I promise you, I will find out. And when I do, there will be no mercy." His pack nodded, their loyalty unwavering, but Caleb could see the fear in their eyes. It wasn't just Leo anymore. The true enemy had yet to reveal themselves. The next morning, Caleb stood in front of the pack's territory, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His mind raced with thoughts of Amelia, of her kidnapping, the betrayal, and the unknown traitor still within the pack. He couldn't help but feel like a failure. He had promised to protect her, and now she was still out there, somewhere, in danger. "Alpha," Jasper said, his voice cautious, "you should see this." He handed Caleb a scrap of parchment, the same kind Amelia had mentioned in her last phone call. The message was short but chilling: "The traitor isn't just one of us." Caleb's blood ran cold. It was clear now, this wasn't just an isolated betrayal. Whoever was pulling the strings had been planning this for longer than Caleb had realized. The enemy was closer than he thought. Caleb didn't waste time. He gathered a small group of his best warriors and set off for the place Amelia had been held captive. The forest was eerily quiet as they moved deeper into the woods, their senses alert to every sound. The air felt heavy, thick with the knowledge that something was wrong. When they arrived at the old cabin, Caleb could feel it. Something had changed. The place had been abandoned, but the scent of Amelia still lingered in the air. Caleb's heart raced as he picked up a small trinket, a necklace that belonged to her. He clutched it in his hand, desperation creeping into his thoughts. "She's close. I can feel it." "Alpha, look," Jasper said, pointing toward the shadows. Caleb's sharp eyes followed the line of sight, and his heart stopped. There, hidden in the trees, was a figure watching them from a distance. The figure stepped forward, and Caleb's heart skipped a beat. It was another member of the pack, Kara, a scout who had been with them since the beginning. But something in her eyes was different, dark, cold. "Why, Kara?" Caleb's voice cracked as the betrayal hit him. Kara had been one of his most trusted members, a scout who knew the land better than anyone else. "Why would you do this?" Kara's lips curled into a cold smile. "You never suspected, did you, Caleb? You were too focused on her, the human girl. She was always going to be your downfall." Caleb's fists clenched, and his wolf howled within him. "You planned this from the start?" he demanded. Kara's eyes glinted with malice. "You were too weak to see it. I've always wanted more power, more control. And I'll take it, even if it means tearing your world apart." The revelation of Kara's betrayal was a blow that Caleb had never expected. His trust in his pack had been shattered, and now he was left with the horrifying truth that there were more traitors among them. As Kara revealed more about the plot to take down Caleb and seize control of the pack, it became clear that this wasn't just about revenge, it was about power. Caleb called a council meeting to address the situation. The room was filled with tension as his pack members gathered around. The loyalty that had once defined the pack was now uncertain. Whispers filled the air, and Caleb knew he had to act fast before more damage was done. "We will not let this pack fall," Caleb said, his voice firm. "But I need your loyalty now more than ever. If you're with me, then fight. If you're not, leave." The silence that followed was thick. Some of his warriors stepped forward, but others hesitated. Caleb felt a pang of sadness as he realized just how fragile his leadership had become. Just as Caleb began to lose hope, a figure appeared in the distance, Amelia. She stumbled out of the forest, weak but alive. Caleb's heart raced as he rushed toward her, relief flooding through him. "Amelia," he breathed, pulling her into his arms. Her head rested against his chest, and Caleb could feel her shaking. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you." Amelia looked up at him, her eyes filled with confusion and pain. "Caleb, I don't understand. Who are these people? Why are they trying to hurt us?" The truth hung heavy in the air, but Caleb couldn't bring himself to reveal it yet. He simply kissed her forehead and promised, "We'll figure it out together." The traitors in the pack had taken everything from Caleb, and now it was time to fight back. He knew that he couldn't do this alone. Caleb needed allies, and fast. He sent word to other werewolf packs, ones that had once been rivals, but now seemed like the only hope for survival. In the dead of night, Caleb met with the leaders of the neighboring packs. Their wolves were fierce, and their loyalty would be hard to earn. But Caleb was desperate. He had to convince them that his pack was worth saving, and that they could defeat the traitors together. "You're asking us to trust you, Alpha Caleb," one of the rival leaders said, his eyes narrowed. "But your pack is broken. Can you still lead them?" Caleb stood tall, his voice unwavering. "I will do whatever it takes. We'll fight for what's rightfully ours, together." The alliance was formed, and Caleb was ready for war. The other packs had agreed to stand with him, but the battle ahead would not be easy. He could feel the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. The fate of his pack, and of his love for Amelia, rested on his shoulders. The night before the war began, Caleb stood by the fire, staring into the flames. His pack was ready, and they were united. But there was something inside him, a fear that maybe he wasn't ready. Could he really lead them to victory? Or would the traitors destroy everything he had worked for? Amelia stood beside him, her hand gently placed on his arm. "You are ready, Caleb," she said softly. "You've always been ready." Her words were a comfort, but they didn't ease the storm inside him. Tomorrow, the battle would begin, and there would be no turning back. The dawn of battle arrived with the first light of the day. Caleb stood with his allies, his pack by his side, as they prepared to face the traitors. His heart raced, but he knew this fight was necessary. The pack's future depended on this moment. The rival packs were ready. The traitors would be hunted down, one by one, until Caleb could take back what was his. Amelia was safe, for now, but Caleb couldn't let his guard down. There would be no mercy. The war for power and loyalty was about to begin. As Caleb led the charge into the woods, his wolf's howl echoed through the trees, signaling the start of the battle that would decide everything. The air was thick with tension as Caleb and his new allies charged through the forest, their wolves in full form. The battle began with a deafening roar, the sound of teeth snapping and claws tearing through the air. Caleb's mind was sharp, his focus solely on the enemies in front of him. Each strike, each move, was calculated. There could be no mistakes. But the traitors were waiting. They were prepared for this. From the shadows, they launched their attack, and soon, chaos reigned in the clearing. Caleb fought fiercely, his wolf tearing through the traitors with a fury that only an alpha could possess. Yet, as he fought, a nagging feeling tugged at his chest. This wasn't just about power. There was something else driving the traitors. Something deeper. Amelia's face flashed in his mind. He couldn't afford to fail. The battle raged on, but Caleb could feel the momentum shifting. The rival packs were strong, but they weren't enough to overcome the traitors who had infiltrated his own pack. Caleb could see it now. His pack was divided, weak from within. Jasper, who had once been his closest confidant, stood at the center of the battlefield, leading the traitors. His eyes locked with Caleb's, a smirk curling on his lips. "You never saw it coming, did you, Caleb?" Jasper called out. "You were too blind to see the power you handed me." With those words, Caleb's anger flared. He shifted into his full werewolf form, his muscles rippling with power. The alpha charged, tearing through the battlefield, his fangs bared. Jasper's betrayal had crossed a line, and now Caleb would make him pay. But just as he reached Jasper, a sharp pain shot through his side. He stumbled back, realizing too late that the traitors had set a trap. Caleb's vision blurred as he struggled to stay on his feet. The pain from the wound was intense, but what cut deeper was the realization that the trap had been set by someone closer than he thought. His mind raced. Who had done this? Who had set him up to fall into this trap? As Caleb staggered back, Leo appeared from the shadows, a cruel grin on his face. "You didn't think I was gone, did you, Caleb?" he sneered. Leo had survived. He had come back stronger, more determined to bring Caleb down. Leo's presence sent a shock through Caleb. He was furious. The fight wasn't over, and now it was personal. Caleb's wolf roared in fury, but his strength was waning. He had to end this, before it was too late. As Leo and Caleb faced off, the pack's loyalty was tested. Some of the pack members stood with Caleb, but others, including Kara, shifted sides and joined Leo's rebellion. Caleb's heart broke as he realized that the pack he had led with pride was crumbling. The trust he had worked so hard to build was shattered, and it was clear that there were deeper betrayals within the ranks. "You failed them, Caleb," Kara's voice echoed in the chaos. "You were too weak to see the truth. Power is everything, and you never understood that." Her words stung, but Caleb refused to let her break him. He had to fight. He had to protect what remained of his pack. With a renewed sense of purpose, Caleb lunged at Leo, his claws slashing through the air. The battle had escalated to new heights, and Caleb could feel the weight of every attack. His pack was splintering, and the tide of the fight was constantly shifting. Every time Caleb thought he had the upper hand, another traitor emerged, sabotaging his efforts. But there was something different now. Caleb had lost everything, his pack, his trust in those around him, but in that moment, he realized what truly mattered. Amelia. She was still out there, and if Caleb had to sacrifice everything to get her back, he would. With renewed determination, Caleb fought through the traitors, his movements becoming a blur of power and speed. His pack began to rally around him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they fought as one. The traitors, now outnumbered, started to retreat. Caleb's heart raced as he faced off with Leo for the final time. The two wolves circled each other, snarling, eyes filled with hatred. This wasn't just a fight for power anymore, it was a fight for Caleb's soul. "You think you can defeat me, Caleb?" Leo growled, his voice laced with venom. "I've been waiting for this moment. I've always been stronger than you." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "You're wrong, Leo," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You've always been weak. And now, I'm going to end this." With one final roar, Caleb launched himself at Leo, his claws sinking deep into his old friend's flesh. The impact sent shockwaves through the clearing. Leo let out a scream, but it was cut short as Caleb delivered the final blow, ending the traitor's life. As Leo crumpled to the ground, Caleb stood over him, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The fight was over, but the cost had been high. The forest fell silent as the dust of battle settled. Caleb's pack stood in the aftermath, their faces bruised and bloodied, but they were victorious. The traitors had been defeated, and the Silvermoon pack had survived. But at what cost? Caleb's heart was heavy as he looked over the battlefield. His pack had been fractured, and the trust they once had in him was broken. He had lost so much. The only thing that mattered now was finding Amelia. His pack began to regroup, but Caleb's eyes were fixed on the horizon. He could feel it. The pull to Amelia was stronger than ever. She was still out there, and Caleb couldn't rest until he brought her home. Caleb didn't waste any more time. With the battle over, his focus shifted entirely to Amelia. He tracked her scent, following it through the forest with a single-minded determination. The pack was recovering, but Caleb knew they needed him to heal their wounds. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When he finally found Amelia, she was sitting in a clearing, looking lost and broken. Her face lit up when she saw him, but Caleb could see the pain in her eyes. "Caleb," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know what they were planning. I never wanted to put you in danger." Caleb knelt before her, his heart breaking. "You didn't do anything wrong, Amelia," he said softly. "It's not your fault." But as he looked into her eyes, Caleb knew there was something she wasn't telling him. She wasn't just scared, she was hiding something. And Caleb would get to the bottom of it, no matter what it took. As Caleb and Amelia spent more time together, Caleb could see the distance in her eyes. She was recovering, but something had changed in her. She wasn't the same woman he had met so many months ago. She had seen too much, things that no human should ever have to endure. Amelia, Caleb began one evening, I need to know what happened. What were they after? What did they want from you? Amelia looked away, her hands trembling. I don't know. They wanted information about the pack. They wanted to use me against you. Caleb's heart sank as the pieces fell into place. The traitors hadn't just been after power. They had been after something much more valuable, information. And Caleb realized that the war wasn't truly over yet. With the traitors defeated and the pack beginning to rebuild, Caleb found himself at a crossroads. His battle for power was over, but his fight for love was just beginning. Amelia was the key to his future, and together, they could face whatever came next. But Caleb knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, enemies who would rise to take Leo's place, and trials that would test their bond. But Caleb was ready. He had fought for his pack, for his future, and for Amelia. Now, together, they would forge a new beginning, one where the past could be left behind, and the future would be full of hope. With Leo's betrayal and the battle behind them, the Silvermoon pack was slowly healing. Caleb spent his days trying to restore the bond between the remaining pack members, but the air was thick with uncertainty. The scars of war were still fresh, and trust would take time to rebuild. As Caleb focused on leading his pack, Amelia stayed close by his side, her presence a comforting anchor in the storm of emotions. But Caleb could see the sadness in her eyes, the way she withdrew when the topic of the betrayal came up. It seemed there was more she hadn't told him, and Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. One evening, as they stood beneath the moonlit sky, Caleb turned to Amelia. You've been quiet, he said gently. I know this has been hard for you, but I need you to be honest with me, Amelia. What aren't you telling me? She looked away, her lips trembling. I'm just scared, Caleb. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if I can handle more loss. Caleb took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. We'll face it together, I promise. The days passed quietly, but Caleb couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that still clung to the pack. One night, as the pack settled around the fire, a figure appeared from the shadows. A lone wolf, standing tall and proud. His eyes glowed with a piercing intensity that made Caleb's wolf growl in warning. Who are you? Caleb asked, his voice calm but firm. The entire pack was on high alert, sensing the stranger's power. I am Seth, the wolf replied, his voice deep and steady. I come to offer an alliance. Caleb narrowed his eyes, not trusting this mysterious newcomer. Alliance? With us? Seth nodded, his gaze unwavering. There is a war coming, Alpha. A war far bigger than what you've just faced. The traitors you dealt with are only the beginning. The true enemy is out there, and they are coming for you. Caleb felt a chill run down his spine. Who are they? Seth's eyes flashed with something dangerous. The Dark Pack. And they won't stop until they destroy everything you've built. The mention of the Dark Pack sent a ripple of fear through Caleb. He had heard whispers of them, an ancient and powerful group of werewolves that operated in the shadows. Their leader, a figure known only as Malachi, was said to be as ruthless as he was cunning. If what Seth said was true, the Dark Pack was now targeting the Silvermoon Pack. What do you want from us? Caleb asked, his voice firm but tinged with suspicion. Seth stepped closer, his eyes locked on Caleb's. I want to help you, Alpha. I know the Dark Pack's ways. I've seen their tactics. They're clever, and they play on your weaknesses. But together, we can stop them. Amelia, standing beside Caleb, eyed Seth warily. How do we know we can trust you? Seth's gaze softened slightly. You don't. But you don't have much of a choice, either. As Caleb and Seth discussed the coming threat, the pack grew uneasy. The idea of joining forces with a stranger who had ties to the Dark Pack was unsettling. Even with Seth's assurances, not everyone was convinced. Some of the pack members were wary, remembering how easily betrayal had found its way into their ranks before. Jasper, though defeated, still had his supporters within the pack. And Kara, who had been a loyal follower of Leo, continued to stir trouble. Whispers of rebellion began to spread again, and Caleb realized he would have to act fast to keep the peace. Trust is a fragile thing, Caleb muttered to himself as he paced. He had fought hard to maintain control, but now it seemed like his leadership was being questioned once more. How could he unite the pack when there were still wolves plotting against him? The days leading up to the Dark Pack's arrival were filled with preparations. Caleb called for a council meeting with his trusted pack members, as well as Seth, who had agreed to stay and help them train. Tensions were high, but Caleb knew that the only way to survive this battle was to stay united. Seth began training Caleb's pack, teaching them how to defend against the Dark Pack's tactics. The Dark Pack was known for their ability to manipulate shadows and control the minds of weaker wolves. Caleb's pack would need to be stronger than ever to survive. The Dark Pack thrives on fear, Seth explained during one of their training sessions. They feed off it. If you let them see your weakness, they'll exploit it. Caleb watched as his pack trained harder than ever, but still, there was a growing sense of unease. Amelia's presence, though comforting, was a constant reminder of the stakes. Caleb had to protect her. He had to protect everything. One night, as the pack settled into their camp, a cold wind swept through the forest. It wasn't just the weather, it was the Dark Pack's presence. Caleb's senses flared, and he could feel the weight of their eyes upon him. Something was coming. He turned to Seth, who was already alert. "They're here," Caleb said quietly. "Tonight, we fight." Seth nodded grimly. "They'll come in force. Be ready." The pack gathered, preparing for what would be their greatest battle yet. Caleb's heart raced, not just from the fear of battle, but from the knowledge that everything, his pack, Amelia, his future, was on the line. The night exploded into chaos. The Dark Pack descended upon the camp like shadows, their wolves moving with eerie silence. Caleb and his pack fought back with everything they had, but the Dark Pack was relentless. Their leader, Malachi, stood at the forefront, watching the battle unfold with a chilling calmness. Caleb clashed with one of Malachi's lieutenants, a massive wolf with fur as black as midnight. Their fight was brutal, each blow more punishing than the last. But Caleb wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for his pack, for Amelia, for everything that had been taken from him. Amelia, watching from the sidelines, felt a surge of fear as she saw the battle unfold. Her heart ached for Caleb, knowing the danger he was in, but she also knew there was nothing she could do. She had to trust him. In the midst of the chaos, Caleb finally came face to face with Malachi. The Dark Pack leader was unlike anyone Caleb had ever encountered. His eyes glowed with a menacing red light, and his presence seemed to drain the very life from the air. "You're strong, Caleb," Malachi said, his voice smooth and cold. "But not strong enough." Caleb growled in response, "I'll never bow to you." Malachi smiled cruelly. "Then we'll see how long you last." With that, the two wolves clashed. Their fight was a battle of strength, speed, and wills, each strike echoing through the night. But Caleb's heart burned with fury, and he fought not just to survive, but to protect everything he held dear. The battle raged for hours, but slowly, Caleb's pack began to gain the upper hand. Seth's training had paid off, and the Dark Pack was starting to retreat. Caleb, exhausted but determined, faced off with Malachi for the final time. "You've lost," Caleb said, his voice rough but resolute. Malachi sneered. "This is not over, Alpha. You've only delayed the inevitable." With a final roar, Caleb lunged at Malachi, delivering a devastating blow that sent the Dark Pack leader sprawling to the ground. His reign of terror was over. As the last of the Dark Pack fled into the night, Caleb stood victorious, his body battered but alive. His pack had survived. The battle had been won, but the cost had been high. Caleb stood in the aftermath, his pack bruised and broken but still standing. They had faced their darkest enemies and emerged victorious. But as Caleb looked at the faces of his pack members, he knew this wasn't the end. There was still much to rebuild. The trust that had been broken would take time to restore. The wounds, both physical and emotional, would take time to heal. But with Amelia by his side, Caleb knew they could face whatever came next. Together, they would rebuild. The days following the defeat of the Dark Pack were filled with recovery. Caleb's pack had suffered casualties, and many were nursing both physical and emotional wounds. Despite their victory, Caleb knew the hard work of rebuilding had only just begun. The loyalty that had been fractured would take time to repair. Amelia remained by his side, offering him quiet comfort as the pack worked to heal. There were still too many unanswered questions, and the feeling of uncertainty lingered in the air. But for the first time in a long while, Caleb felt a spark of hope. His pack was still strong, and the bond he had with Amelia was unwavering. As he walked through the camp, watching his pack members work together, Caleb knew the future wasn't set in stone. They would face more challenges, but they had a chance to start over, stronger, united, and ready for whatever the world threw their way. Despite the Dark Pack's retreat, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that something still lurked in the shadows. His mind kept returning to Malachi's final words, "This is not over." The weight of those words haunted him. Caleb knew there were others who would rise to challenge him, but the question was, who? The pack had fought hard to secure their survival, but the war had taken its toll, not just on their bodies, but on their spirits. Caleb noticed a growing tension in the air, and it wasn't just from external threats. The pack's unity had been tested too severely, and while they had survived, the scars from the past remained. Caleb could feel the anxiety in the pack members' eyes as they whispered among themselves. There was fear of what was to come next, of what they had yet to face. As Caleb sought answers, he realized that the Dark Pack's defeat had uncovered something far darker than he had anticipated. The secret they had kept hidden, the reason for their assault, was not just about power. They had wanted something else, something Caleb hadn't even considered. One evening, as Caleb met with Seth in the woods, he asked the question that had been haunting him. "What do you know about Malachi's true intentions?" Seth paused, his eyes flickering with something Caleb couldn't quite place. Malachi was not just after control, he was trying to awaken something ancient. A power that has been lost for centuries. Caleb felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of power? Seth looked away, as if reluctant to speak. "It's not just about territory, Caleb. The Dark Pack was trying to tap into an ancient werewolf artifact, one that could tip the balance of power in the world. If it's activated, it could change everything." The revelation about the ancient artifact shook Caleb to his core. The pack's survival was no longer the only concern. They now had to prevent something much darker from rising. If the Dark Pack had been after this artifact, then others would surely come for it as well. Caleb gathered the pack once again, his mind racing as he spoke. "We are no longer just fighting for control of our land. We are fighting to protect something far more valuable, something that could change the fate of all werewolves." His voice echoed in the clearing as he explained the situation to his pack. His warriors, still weary from battle, listened intently. They had fought once to protect their pack, but this was a fight that would take them beyond their borders. They would need to stand together if they hoped to prevent the artifact from falling into the wrong hands. With a new mission ahead of them, Caleb and his pack began their search for the artifact. The journey would be dangerous, and the odds were stacked against them. They knew the Dark Pack wasn't the only group after the artifact. As rumors of its power spread, Caleb could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. Amelia, who had always been by his side, stood quietly beside him. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. Her words were a comfort, but Caleb knew this journey was something he had to take on himself. He couldn't risk Amelia being caught up in this. "Stay behind and protect the pack," Caleb said, his voice gentle but firm. "I need to know you're safe." Amelia's eyes filled with concern, but she nodded. "Just promise me you'll come back." As Caleb and his warriors ventured into the wilderness, they faced more challenges than they anticipated. The search for the artifact took them through treacherous terrain, and the threat of rival packs grew stronger with every step. Caleb's instincts told him that someone within his own pack was still hiding something. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this betrayal than he had realized. During a brief rest, Caleb pulled Seth aside. "You've been holding something back, Seth," he said, his voice low. "I know there's more you're not telling me." "What aren't you saying?" Seth hesitated, his gaze distant. "There's a prophecy, Caleb. One that speaks of a chosen alpha who will either save or destroy everything. It's been whispered in the shadows for centuries, but I didn't want to tell you. You've already been through so much." Caleb's blood ran cold. "A prophecy?" Seth nodded grimly. "Yes. And if you're the one they're speaking of, then the artifact is key. It could be your salvation, or your downfall." With the weight of the prophecy hanging over him, Caleb's journey grew even more complicated. The path he was on now felt darker, as if he was walking toward a destiny he didn't fully understand. The pack members around him had started to look at him differently, as if they were waiting for something, waiting for him to fulfill his role. Amelia's absence weighed heavily on Caleb's mind. He had sent her away to keep her safe, but now he couldn't help but feel that she was still a part of this, no matter how far apart they were. He had promised to protect her, but what if she was the key to unlocking the artifact's power? The thoughts gnawed at him as he led his pack through the forests. His mission was clear, but the lines between good and evil were becoming increasingly blurred. As Caleb and his pack continued their journey, they encountered more signs of the Dark Pack's influence. The deeper they went, the more hostile the land became. The environment itself seemed to push back against them, as if some ancient force was trying to keep them from finding the artifact. Caleb's senses were on high alert. He could feel the presence of something dark, something old and powerful. But the deeper they went, the more uncertain he became. Who were the true enemies in this fight? Was it just the Dark Pack, or were there greater forces at play? That night, as Caleb sat by the fire, Seth spoke again. "There are those who would see the world fall into chaos, Caleb. The artifact is a tool, and it will either protect us or destroy us." Caleb didn't know if he was ready for what was coming, but he had no choice. The journey had already begun, and there was no turning back. After days of searching, Caleb and his pack finally found what they had been looking for, a hidden temple deep in the mountains. The air around it felt thick with ancient power, and Caleb could feel the weight of the artifact's presence. The temple was guarded, not just by nature but by dark forces. As they entered, Caleb could feel his wolf instincts stirring. This place was alive with magic, and it was unlike anything he had ever felt before. "Stay close," Caleb instructed his pack as they ventured deeper into the temple. "We don't know what we're up against." The temple's interior was a maze of stone and shadow. They could hear whispers echoing through the halls, as if the walls themselves were alive, watching their every move. At the heart of the temple, Caleb found it, the artifact. It was a large, glowing stone, pulsing with an eerie energy that seemed to call out to him. As Caleb approached it, his wolf instincts flared. He felt a deep connection to the artifact, as if it was meant for him. But before he could reach out to touch it, a shadow moved in the darkness. "You thought you could stop us," a voice hissed. "You thought you could take it for yourself." Caleb spun around, his claws ready. In front of him stood a figure, Malachi, alive and more powerful than ever. Malachi's presence sent a wave of dread through the air. Caleb's heart raced as he faced the Dark Pack leader, now standing before him as though nothing had changed. The battle they had fought months ago felt like it was all leading to this moment. "You think you've won, Caleb," Malachi sneered, stepping forward. "But this is only the beginning. The artifact belongs to me, and nothing you do will change that." Caleb's hands clenched into fists, his wolf growling inside of him. "I won't let you have it," he snarled. "I will destroy anyone who tries to take what belongs to my pack." The two locked eyes, a battle of wills unfolding. Caleb could feel the weight of the artifact's power, but he also knew that Malachi's strength had grown. It was no longer just a battle for the artifact, it was a fight for the future of werewolves everywhere. With a snarl, Malachi lunged at Caleb, his claws slashing through the air. Caleb dodged, his body moving with speed and precision as his wolf form fully emerged. The power of the artifact pulsed in the temple, making the air vibrate with energy. Caleb could feel it. This wasn't just a physical battle. It was a clash of destinies, of ancient forces. Malachi's wolf was massive, his fur black as night. Caleb could feel the darkness in him, the hunger for domination. With a roar, Caleb met him head-on, their wolves colliding with the force of an explosion. The battle raged on, the sound of growls and claws tearing through stone echoing in the temple. Every blow Caleb struck felt like it was driven by more than just anger. It was a fight for Amelia, for his pack, and for the survival of everything he held dear. The fight seemed endless. Malachi's strength was unmatched, but Caleb's resolve was stronger. The words of Seth echoed in his mind. The prophecy speaks of a chosen alpha who will either save or destroy everything. Caleb realized then, he was that alpha, and the artifact was the key to his power. With a sudden surge of energy, Caleb felt the artifact's power course through him. It was like a rush of adrenaline and strength, heightening every sense and every instinct. He could feel Malachi's dark magic trying to fight back, but Caleb's will was unyielding. "Your reign ends here," Caleb growled as he delivered a final, crushing blow to Malachi's side, knocking the dark pack leader to the ground. Malachi's eyes flickered with a mix of rage and disbelief. You were always the one," he whispered, the light fading from his eyes as his body crumpled to the floor. The battle was over, but the cost had been immense. As Malachi lay defeated, Caleb stood over him, panting and bloodied, his wolf form still strong but faltering. The power of the artifact slowly began to fade as the darkness lifted from the temple. The echoes of the battle faded into silence, leaving Caleb standing alone with the ruins of what had been the Dark Pack's last stand. His pack gathered around him, their faces weary but relieved. Seth, standing in the shadows, nodded at Caleb. "You've done it, Alpha. The Dark Pack is no more." But Caleb's heart was heavy. He had won, but at what cost? His pack was fractured, and the land they had fought so hard to protect was still scarred. The artifact, now drained of its power, had fulfilled its purpose, but its true cost was yet to be understood. With the Dark Pack's defeat, the immediate threat had passed. But Caleb knew that the real challenge now was rebuilding what had been lost. His pack was strong, but they were broken. Trust had been shattered, and it would take time to heal the wounds of betrayal and war. Caleb spent days working alongside his pack, restoring the bond that had once been so unbreakable. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to bring them back together. Amelia stayed by his side, offering her support and love. She had always been his anchor, and now, more than ever, he needed her. "We've been through so much," Caleb said one evening, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "But we're still here, and together, we'll rebuild." As the days passed, the pack began to heal. The wolves who had once questioned Caleb's leadership now stood by him more fiercely than ever. There was still much to do, but the unity that had been fractured was slowly being restored. Caleb could feel the change in the air. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about thriving. Amelia, who had once been a stranger to this world, now stood at Caleb's side as his equal. Their bond was stronger than ever, forged in the fires of battle. Caleb had promised to protect her, but in the end, it was Amelia who had helped protect him. Together, they had weathered the storm. "I don't know what the future holds," Caleb said one night as they looked out over the pack's territory, "but I know that whatever comes, we will face it together." While the pack was rebuilding, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking in the shadows. Though the Dark Pack was gone, the remnants of their influence remained. Caleb's instincts told him that they had not yet seen the full extent of what the Dark Pack had planned. One evening, as Caleb walked through the woods, his senses suddenly flared. There was someone nearby, someone watching him. His wolf growled low in his throat as he cautiously approached. "Who's there?" Caleb called, his voice echoing through the trees. From the darkness, a figure emerged. It was a man, dressed in dark clothing, with eyes that glowed a faint red. Caleb tensed, ready for another fight. "I've been waiting for you, Alpha Caleb," the stranger said, his voice cold and menacing. The figure stepped forward, and Caleb's heart sank. This was no ordinary wolf. The man before him was far too powerful to be a simple rogue. His eyes gleamed with malicious intent, and there was something about him that felt unnatural. "I am not here to fight you, Alpha," the stranger said, his tone smooth. "I'm here to offer you a choice." Caleb narrowed his eyes. "What choice?" The man smiled, a cruel, twisted grin. "Join me, Caleb. Together, we can rule this world. You have the power. I can help you unlock it." Caleb's blood ran cold. He could feel the pull of the offer, but he would not be swayed. "I already have everything I need. You will not control me." The man's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "Then you will regret this choice." The man vanished into the shadows, leaving Caleb standing alone. His heart raced, his mind a whirl of thoughts. Who was this new enemy? And why had they come for him now, after everything that had happened? Caleb knew that this was not over. The battle with the Dark Pack had been just the beginning. There were darker forces at play, and Caleb would need to be ready for whatever came next. He gathered his pack, and they began to prepare for the unknown threat that loomed on the horizon. "This is our last test," Caleb said to his pack, his voice filled with resolve. "But we will face it together. No matter what happens, we will fight to the end." The final battle was coming, and Caleb could feel it in his bones. The threat they faced was unlike any they had encountered before. The enemy was powerful, and their intentions were unclear. But Caleb was ready. He had fought for everything he loved, his pack, his future, and Amelia. As he stood with his pack, looking toward the horizon, Caleb knew that the legacy of the Silvermoon Pack would live on. The darkness they had faced would never truly leave them, but Caleb and Amelia were determined to rise above it. They had fought for survival, for loyalty, and for love. And in the end, that would be their strength. With Amelia by his side and his pack at his back, Caleb stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. Together, they would build a future stronger than the past, and nothing, no enemy, no darkness, could ever tear them apart.